looking at the recent earnings, up 102% from a year ago. I mean, obviously, the American consumer is coming back. Nike's growth prospects, and you're aiming for 40% growth, $27 billion in revenue. I mean, whatever number you choose, the big question is, what's the American consumer and the global consumer buying right now? They have come back.
Well, they've certainly come back to some degree. Different markets have responded or rebounded different than others. And we're certainly here in the United States, as well as places like China. We're starting to see the consumers spend again and reinvest in our brand. And we're very excited about that. And I think it sets a great tone for the future when we're here talking about 2015 and the opportunity to grow to a $27 billion company.
Nike has obviously made a lot of acquisitions. You just see some of the different brands behind us here. And you've got a lot of partners. So is there ever a fear that Nike can get too big?
Well, I certainly hope not. That's our opportunity, and I think that's our challenge. We've always been a growth company, and we consider ourselves a growth company today. That's why we're talking about the type of growth that we already talked about here today at the Investor Day. I believe that we continue to have the ability to create new marketplaces. We always talk about participating in an infinite place, not a finite place. It challenges us to think about things differently and come up with compelling and relevant ways to connect with the consumer.
It's interesting when you look at where the growth is. I mean, reading through the numbers, China up 10% in the quarter, emerging markets up 43%, so much stronger than China. You've been at Nike since 1979. You paved the way in what we call those BRIC countries, Brazil, India, China. How long ago did you see this coming?
Well, certainly for China, we saw it coming, go all the way back to 1980 when we first started working with the Chinese government on manufacturing. I think from a commerce standpoint, that really started to come online in the mid-90s. And when Beijing was announced and the world of sport was going to come to China, we really started to focus on the opportunities that we felt we could create around the Nike brand with the Chinese consumer.
When you're looking at those marketplaces, and as a global corporation, you've got to think far ahead of what's coming. People are talking about a real estate bubble potentially in China. People are talking, look at what's happening in Europe in terms of the debt crisis. So the question is, how much opportunity lie in those emerging markets and lie in China right now?
I still think that for the Nike brand, there's still a lot of opportunity. I believe that we aren't as affected by some of the global economic conditions that may affect some other segments of the business world. And certainly sport, which is our foundation, maybe has a little bit more consistent appeal over a period of time. And as you think of places like Brazil, where they're going to host both a World Cup and an Olympics in back-to-back 2-year segments, and they're as crazy about sports as they are, it's another place for Nike to really go in and do some things that are maybe a little bit different.
And you mentioned the World Cup, so bringing that up, World Cup's huge for you. So what are you going to do to win?
We're very excited about this year's World Cup with 9 teams representing the Nike brand, and now with the addition of Umbro in that acquisition, one of the biggest single brands in the world of football is the English national team. And so they come on board and working with us through Umbro. It represents our biggest footprint ever at a World Cup. It will be our biggest campaign ever.
Really?
And for us, I think that if we're going to continue to hit those $27 billion targets, football is going to be a big part of our growth in the future.
Looking at, you're in charge of Nike brand. It's huge, right? All of it. So I would assume that Nike's goal is to be number one in every single sport, in every division. But people buy Nike for 2 reasons. One, performance, and the other, style. So how do you target both without alienating the other?
Well, I think we look at it as a complement. A lot of the things that we talk about, and even as we're talking about it today, the brand and the way we look at our categories, we start with the competition level, and we start with compete as the pinnacle level, the relationship with the athlete, and really our inspiration and the athlete challenging us from an innovation standpoint. Then the credibility that's earned on the field of play is then actually brought down into the lifestyle aspect. Because being fit, being out there participating is an important part of people's lives around the world. And that's where Nike has the most credibility as a brand, and I believe can do it any better than anybody else. So it's a complement to the competitive business, and we don't see it as a conflict.